I think this is one of the greatest revelations that came out of the UN General Assembly held in September of 2023 in New York. Clearly, because this shows that the United States of America is willing to play chess, and all those that has accused them of ignoring home base or ignoring the Atlantic basin for going out into the Pacific, near Japan, Korea, and China, Taiwan. And at the same time, you have, for example, China is making ties or establishing ties with Venezuela, reference the Monroe Doctrine or the Americans' yards, the Caribbean and the Atlantic Basin and the Pacific, and then Western Europe. Also, they've been spending so much time in with the what's going on in Europe that they have forgotten their true home base. So when they announced this, this is indicating that this NATO alliance, if it is on rocky ground, they have SATO, well, not really, Southern Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's not SATO, which in other words would have been, because it includes many of the nations from the South. Now, the traditional Western alliances are in there, and notably Britain, the United Kingdom is part of it. And then you have Canada, United States, and you have Brazil, biggest country in South America, Latin America. And then you have Nigeria, one of the most populous country in Africa. So you can see it's quite strategic. It's a major announcement. Secretary of State Blinken launches Partnership for the Atlantic Cooperation. It reminds me, like I said, of the predecessor to NATO, or even soon will become even more powerful than NATO. So the theater is shifting. Maybe they're concentrating a lot more, but this signals that they're now ready to concentrate a lot more in their yard, a lot more in the Atlantic corridor, in the Atlantic space, stretching from Western Europe to the north, all the way down to the west coast of Africa, into the Caribbean and the Americas. This is significant news. President Joe Biden said in his address to the United Nations, the UN General Assembly, on September 19th, 2023, in New York City. Just yesterday, after 2 years of consultation and diplomacy, the United States brought together dozens of nations across 4 continents to establish a new partnership for Atlantic cooperation, so that the coastal Atlantic countries can better cooperate on science, technology, environmental protection, and sustainable economic development. The White House said that more than 30 Atlantic countries on 4 continents committed Monday to bolster coordination on economic development, environmental protection, maritime issues, and much more. Reports indicate that the adoption of the Declaration on Atlantic Cooperation was completed Monday evening at a meeting hosted by U.S. Secretary of State Mr. Antony Blinken ahead of the start of the annual United Nations General Assembly meeting. Blinken told the gathering, "The Atlantic connects and sustains us like never before." He noted that the Atlantic hosts the largest amount of international shipping and through undersea cables, and is a thoroughfare for data traffic more than any other ocean. However, he said, the Atlantic is also threatened by climate change, which has brought stronger and more devastating storms to vulnerable coastal communities and illegal fishing. It's the heating and cooling of the Atlantic that is driving global climate and weather patterns, he said. So now, when we consider this declaration on Atlantic cooperation, while it is framed as an environmental sustainability initiative, it also has the undertones of security initiatives or data security because of the mention of the data cables and the undersea cables in the Atlantic. So there you have the security aspect of it. You also have the geopolitical aspect of it being the maritime boundaries of the United States of America being based in the Atlantic, and from the Monroe Doctrine, this is its sphere of influence, the Atlantic Ocean. So basically, this, I believe, states a beginning of a new era, as I previously said, in which not just NATO or the North Atlantic countries, but a combination of both northern and southern countries, as you have countries in the Caribbean like Dominica, you have countries in Africa like Nigeria, and you have the traditional NATO or North Atlantic organization countries like Great Britain, Spain, and Portugal included. Of course, Canada is part of this alliance, and you have, I said, in Africa, Nigeria, which is very important, and Brazil in Latin America, the biggest country or most populous country. So the two most populous countries on the two other continents, on Africa, Nigeria, and in Latin America, Brazil, are part of this Declaration on Atlantic Cooperation, which the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has announced before the UN General Assembly. President Joe Biden mentioned that in his address, and I think this is breaking ground shaking news. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button and see you around for more.